I'm praying like that in my head, again, quiet. This woman turns around again, looks me straight in the eye, and she said, "What did you say?" And I was double struck, going, I know I was not praying out loud. A number of years ago, I was standing in a line in Kroger, in the pharmacy line, just waiting to pick up a prescription, and there were these two teenage girls in front of me, and they were talking, not loudly, but enough that I could hear, about one of their friends. And you know how it is. When they're not in your presence, you talk a little bit more bluntly. And I thought to myself, man, if that friend was here right now, they would have been hurt to the heart, I think, on some of this. So I was thinking about that as I went ahead, got my prescription, heading back out to my car, and thinking, not really praying about it, but just kind of thinking about that. And I felt like I heard the Lord speak to my heart. He says, rather than talking behind people's backs, which everybody does, that was the thought, why don't you pray behind somebody's back? And that was like a new thought to me. I mean, I had thought about praying for people when they weren't looking at me, but the idea of actively stepping into that. So I started this experiment over a couple of months. Every time I found myself in a line, whether I was at the grocery store or the hardware store, wherever there was someone in front of me, where I could remember it, I would say, okay, I'm just going to pray a simple prayer for them behind their back. Not with my words, not so anybody could hear, but just in my head. Things like, Lord, I pray you'd reveal yourself to them. I pray that the goodness and the kindness of who you are would be demonstrated to them, and so, things like that. And so in this particular case, I had prayed that many, many times, but I found myself running to the grocery for my wife to pick up some pasta and just a few little items. So I ran straight to the self-checkout aisle because, when I get in, get out, I'm kind of that guy. I was just about to get to the easy checkout, and I just remembered, I want to pray behind people's backs. So I look at the aisles, and there were people in the aisles, actually, not at the self-serve. And so I walked over to aisle 9, and I saw this woman in front of me with a basket full, and I thought, well, all right, I don't have anywhere to be. I'm going to do this. So I would stand behind her, and as I did, I thought, I'm going to start praying. I'm going to do what I've done. So quietly, I begin to pray for her. Lord, would you just would you bring a fullness to her life? Would you show her who you really are? Simple little things in my head, not on my lips. I figured she was a mother because when I looked at her basket, it was full of kid food, and she was obviously trying to make a dollar stretch because she had all these coupons as well. So I thought, I may be standing here a while. So I stayed there and kept on praying quietly. And as I did, not more than not even a minute perhaps, she turns around to me, kind of startled me, looks me straight in the eye and says, do I know you? And I thought, I was caught off. And I said, well, I don't know. I come to this store often. My name's Rusty. I'm from the city. I'm kind of acting like that. And she didn't ring a bell to her. I reached out my hand and we shook, and she just kind of curiously turned back around. And I thought to myself, I wasn't praying out loud, was I? I'm sure I wasn't, but off we went on. The cashier, is taking the items and swinging it over the eye, wank, wank, making that funny sound. The conveyor belt was rolling. And so a minute or two later, I just stand there, begin to pray again. By that time, another woman had come in with a big basket. I was tied in. There was no way I could get out. So, all right, I'm in for the way. Lord, I pray you would just, I saw that she had a ring on her finger, and I thought, well, she's obviously married. So, Lord, I pray you bring great deepness and richness in their marriage. And right in there, just this thought came into my mind about two teenage girls. And so I just went on to it. Lord, I pray you would just bless those children in that relationship, in this family, these two girls. I just presumed it was, again, in my head. And in so being, I felt there might be a little friction between a mother and a daughter. So Lord, I pray you would bring restoration to any difficulty or frustration there might be with teenage girls, as there might be. I'm praying like that in my head, again, quiet. This woman turns around again, looks me straight in the eye, and she said, what did you say? And I was double struck, going, I know I was not praying out loud. And I was like, well, and before I could stop the words off my lips, I said, I was just standing here praying for you. And when I said that, there was this awkward pause. She was looking at me. The cashier is looking at me now, looking up as she's still running the things around. And I'm kind of like, she says, you were praying for me? And I said, yeah, well, I've kind of have this thing when I stand in lines, I like to, just pray for the person who's in front of me. And she says, well, what were you praying? Not with a concerned look, but just like an interesting look. And I could see tears were starting to well up in her eyes when she says that. I said, well, I was just praying for you, that God would show you how much He loves you, and that your marriage would be strong, and that and she reaches to her handbag and gets a tissue out, and she says, well, that is so nice. And I could tell I was in one of these moments, and the cashier lady was really into it. She was moving slower, watching me now. And I said, you don't have 2 girls, do you? And she nearly dropped her tissue there, She says, well, yes, I do. I said, well, that's one of the things I was praying for. I was asking that God would bring some, cleanness in the relationship there, that there'd be a restoration if there was some friction or some falling out. And she just dropped her hands and said, how do you know that? And I said, well, I don't know that. That's just what was dropped in my mind as I'm praying for you. She said, I have 2 girls. I love them to death, but one of them is driving me nuts right now. We're on the outs. And I said, do you mind if I just pray for you right now like that? And she, full tear up, fully turns my way. The cashier has stopped everything. Now the conveyor belt is running. And I put my hand on her shoulder, and maybe I should have asked to do that, but I didn't. I just put my hand on her shoulder and simply said, do what only you can do. Bring hope to this situation. Bring life to this situation. I pray you bless this family. She just is wiping her eyes after that. I could feel the moment kind of supercharged in this time. The cashier catches my eye. I look over at her. I think her name was Cheryl. She had a name tag on, Cheryl. And she looks at me and she says, can you pray for me too? I got kid problems as well. And I said, sure. So I reach across the conveyor belt and I pray for her, and she just starts to cry as well. I look around, the woman behind me, she's got a big smile on her. This woman here is still wiping her eyes. After we prayed just shortly for the cashier, she says, we're having church here in aisle number 9. And I thought to myself, well, maybe we were. It just proved to the point to me that God's always doing something. I'm wondering if I'm seeing it.